Recently, WrestleMania took place, but I have no interest in talking about that. I'm only talking about parts of it because Stone Cold Steve Austin recently had an accident when he was on his little four wheeler, and it led to a woman trying to get a lawsuit with her delayed fall. Now, talking about that will also allow me to talk about how Hollywood enacted a coup to essentially erase Vince McMahon, pretty much turn him into Chris Benoit, where he can't be mentioned, and if he is, people question it. And the reason why the two stories are relevant because they both involve a woman trying to con herself into some dough. Now, in the first portion of this video, the woman falling at WrestleMania, it's a clear example of the ever-present lies that females like to engage in. You saw it on her face. At first, she was initially shocked, and then she realized, hey, I was standing behind this barricade, so I could just fall and maybe get a lawsuit. And it was taken so seriously that Nick Khan, who I believe is the president of WWE now, part of the Hollywood coup, he went and checked on the woman, as well as Stone Cold did, who did it briefly, but then went on about his business. And, things like this is just a prime example of why people who try to enact phony suits deserve to be financially penalized themselves. Now, again, there's no official word whether or not she's launching a lawsuit, but clearly the attempt was made just with her falling. And it's a similar attempt of a woman trying to get some money out of a situation based on a lie, like the Vince McMahon situation with Janelle Grant, which Hollywood clearly used as a coup to remove Vince McMahon and have the Hollywood leadership that they have now through the Endeavor Company and their man, Ari Emanuel, who was sort of immortalized in the HBO series Entourage. The Ari Gold character was inspired by him. A character by, I might add, would be considered, a Me Too candidate. If, at the very least, someone who would be accused nowadays as being an abuser of his employees, because that was a part of the Ari Gold character, that he would, sort of be verbally antagonistic towards his workers, especially his gay Asian assistant. But anyway, it would be fitting, if the woman did sue WWE for this incident. I don't know if she'll actually be able to, but it would be fitting nonetheless, since the current owners of WWE, they were able to unseat Vince McMahon through the use of a woman. A ring rat woman who, just like Vince McMahon, loved to engage in degenerate sexual acts, particularly involving human feces, which, believe it or not, is a very common occurrence for women looking to earn money. There's a whole porta potty trip that takes place from women from the Western world that go to the Middle East, particularly and most notably to Dubai. But anyway, Janelle Grant engaged in that very same activity, but of course it was spun as this narrative that she was this lowly, abused woman who loved and took care of her parents, which that story has been proven fraudulent. But nonetheless, it was enough work by the powers that be that wanted to unseat Vince McMahon. I mean, first and foremost, it's one less family company, and most notably is also one less company led by sort of a patriarchal male. And him being friends with him being friends with Donald Trump also didn't help his case as well. And quite frankly, WWE current ownership make Vince McMahon seem like a choir boy. Because as we know, Ari Emanuel is not only connected to Hollywood, which we know is rooted in pedophilia, let alone exploitation of women, but he's also connected to politics through his brother, Rahm Emanuel, who worked in the Obama administration. And those two beasts combined dwarf anything Vince McMahon has done. And again, it was clearly a move to just replace him because we know that they don't actually care about true victims of sex crimes. I mean, again, in this Janelle Grant situation, they didn't even bother to use a real victim of sex crime because she wasn't a victim. She was just a high-priced ring rat. Because if they were about real crime victims, they would, use the ring boy scandal. But that involves the abuse of young boys in the entertainment industry and young children in general. We know they like to pretend the abuse of those doesn't take place. It's a QAnon conspiracy. And also it would involve demonizing homosexual sexual predators, which we know they go out of their way to defend. And so, using a lowly old woman playing a victim fit, enough of a narrative, and enough people were pissed off at Vince McMahon, particularly in the WWE universe because of his poor booking. And so that was more than enough to unseat him. And when you're controlling the entertainment industry, corporate America, and politics, and by way of those three things, pretty much control the court of public opinion, you can do what you will to unseat people who you want removed. And again, it doesn't matter if it's based on blatant hypocrisy. Now, like I said before, he did recently get mentioned. Triple H mentioned him during his Hall of Fame speech. Because obviously, if he's giving credit to people responsible for his success, he can't not mention Vince McMahon. But then you had some nitwit at the little scrum nonsense that they do have the audacity to question him about mentioning Vince McMahon. And Triple H stated, no one here would be here if it wasn't for him. But again, as we know, these people don't care about this stuff, especially the globalists pushing liberal ideology. I mean, they love unseating presumably heterosexual men, particularly when they're white males. They love replacing them. Is why they seek to brand even the creators of the Constitution as just a bunch of racist white men that own slaves. But of course, they'll selectively praise them when they're trying to combat against, a president that they don't like, where they can spin some sort of narrative about him going against the Constitution. A thing that we, again, know that they don't care about because they just label them as racist white men that wrote it. And we're seeing it not just all throughout entertainment where they're trying to engage in erasure. We're seeing it throughout all of Western civilization and culture, and placing, diversity hires and narratives in its place. Thus come in the Nick Khans of the world and their Jewish enablers, which Ari Emanuel is. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting narrative that really connected things. One narrative, lying women being involved to try to get men in trouble, powerful men in trouble, and then, how that is used to engage in erasure, of people who build and created things just so it can be taken over by people that didn't really build or create anything.